Welcome to Torah Today Ministries. My name is Grant Luton.
And I'm Robin. And I guess today we are going to continue our conversation about the tabernacle. Yes, we started last time, and we realized this is too important to just brush past.
Right.
Because I think, Grant, we could safely say that the tabernacle and the design that God gave from the heavenlies is his schematic for everything that matters in life.
Everything the Bible wants to teach us is illustrated through the picture of the tabernacle.
It is. And that's a big statement. And our words, as we try to share some of the details that we find fascinating, will fall short.
Right.
So we're just praying that God's Spirit will bring this alive and spark a real awareness of what he's given us here.
So I just encourage anyone who's listening, don't get frustrated with your study of the tabernacle. No one ever gets to the bottom of the whole thing.
And don't skip over it because you think it's not important or too hard to understand.
Your whole life, your whole life will be drawing new things out of this ancient picture. But for our purposes, our discussion is going to center on seeing two things in the tabernacle. First of all, it's a picture of Messiah. It's a picture of the perfect human being, the Son of God, the sinless Son of God, who came and tabernacled among us, it says in the first chapter of John. And so the tabernacle is a picture of him, because God says, I want you to build this tabernacle so I may dwell among you. And, of course, one of Yeshua's name was Emmanuel, God with us.
Right.
But since we're made in the image of God, we're to be disciples of Yeshua. We're to be as much like him as we possibly can. It's also a picture of us, of what we should be. So we want to see him. We also want to see us.
And as we discussed before, the rendering of that statement in the Hebrew language doesn't just mean among us, but within
us, yes.
Right. And that is incredible.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. Well, we had an introduction last session, and we looked at Exodus 25, the first 9 verses, where God introduces the tabernacle. So today, we're going to look at 2 parts of the tabernacle, and that will be the Ark of the Covenant and the cover of the Ark.
Did we take a moment last conversation to describe how the structure is divided into 3 parts?
Maybe we did, maybe we didn't, but let's make sure to
just review that quickly?
Well, one of the things you'll notice as we go through the study of the tabernacle, God starts on the inside and works out.
Right.
So he starts with the Holy of Holies, this cube-shaped room, and it was the inner sanctum. This is the place only the high priest could go, only one day a year on the day of Yom Kippur. And the only thing in the Holy of Holies was the Ark of the Covenant with its cover atop it. And then to the east was a veil. You could go out from the veil into the holy place. And in the holy place, on the north side would be the table of showbread. On the south side would be the menorah. And right there in between, in front of the veil you came through, is the golden altar of incense. Then you go on further east, out that veil, you go out into the courtyard. And there are 2 things out there. There's the bronze altar where the sacrifices were made, and the bronze laver where washing was done. If you keep going further east, you go out another screen, so to speak, and then you're out into the camp. So the entrance into the Holy of Holies and back out was always on the east side.
And we mentioned last time that it's significant because we're making our way back to reconnection with God that was broken in Eden, and we departed to the east.
Yeah, so the tabernacle is the way of God reestablishing Eden, his presence on earth, and making a way for people to come back to him, to return to him.
And I'll tell you, you can draw a picture of this, and people have made models of this, and you can talk all about the physical aspects of this. But there's a very, very, very mystical aspect, many of them, layers and layers. And if that makes you uncomfortable, then I guess maybe you should skip over the tabernacle.
Well, maybe we should use the word spiritual instead of mystical.
But
that people are more comfortable with that.
But it is. It's very, very otherworldly, the things that the divine wants us to understand about the world.
Well, let's just give an example. You got these three areas: the outer court, which represents the physical world, because you look up, you see the sun, moon, and stars. You look down, there's just dirt. Of course, there's no floor in the tabernacle, but it was open to the rain and the wind and snow and whatever else. And that's like the human body.
Yeah.
It's just open to the elements.
Right.
But when you go through the veil into the holy place, then you're in a place where the menorah is the source of light. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this part represents the soul, the mind, will, and emotions. And our minds are not illuminated by the light of the sun, but by the light of truth.
Yeah.
But then if you go into the Holy of Holies, now you're at the innermost part, and that represents the spirit of a person.
See?
And that's where God's Holy Spirit, his Shekinah glory, would dwell. And it was lit by the glory of God.
Yes.
And you look at the last couple chapters of Revelation, we see the New Jerusalem, and it said that the city had no need of the sun or the moon because the glory of God was the light of the city. And that's the way it was in the Holy of Holies. So we are souls, but we have a body and we have a spirit.
So there are those three parts.
Yes.
There are those three distinct areas.
Yes.
It's a schematic, but they're all integrated into one. It has been said that every person is a tabernacle because it's where the spiritual and the physical meet.
Yes.
And if we go back to Eden just for a moment, once again, we remember that God breathed his neshama of life into that mud man, which was very, very physical, and he became a living soul. Yeah. So there we are.
And one last thing, because our time's getting away, we haven't even started reading yet, but if you could step in your imagination, step into the outer court, it's not a very pretty place. There's an altar of bronze, and there's a fire on it, and there are animals being sacrificed and cut up and put on the altar, and there'd be blood and ash and people milling around, and it's surrounded by curtains, which are just white curtains. It's, there's nothing beautiful about the outside of the tabernacle. But the moment you step into the inside, everything changes. It becomes so beautiful.
Starts to quiet as well.
Yeah, walls that are gold and reflective. You look up and there's red, blue, and purple embroidered ceiling with cherubim. And there's the table of showbread, the menorah, and it just gets more beautiful on the inside. And we as people tend to focus on the body.
Always.
Always we want to make a beautiful courtyard, but inside we can be really empty.
And that's where God invites us to really connect with him in that quiet place. And I use the word quiet because as we go deeper and further into the inner court of the tabernacle, it gets less crowded and it gets quieter. Right. I read recently a funny little sentence. It says, don't just do something, sit there. And you and I have talked before about how as spirituality increases, activity decreases. Yes. And so keeping that in mind, let's jump into the description of this inner place.
So we'll start with the ark and then the cover. And I know what you're thinking, well, aren't they just all one piece?
No.
Well, we pictured them as one because they're the lid, the cover, the kaporet was always on top of the ark. But in the descriptions, they're described always as two separate pieces.
Right. And why does that matter?
You'll see this over and over. We'll get to that later. We'll let people stew and think about that.
All right.
So we start with the box itself, the ark. Verse 10, they shall make an ark, and the word for ark is aron. It's not the same word as ark of Noah's ark, which was a teva. This is an aron, a box of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits its length. By the way, acacia wood in the Bible is used only in the context of the tabernacle.
Okay.
And it's shittim in Hebrew, so whatever your translation has. 1.5 cubits its width, 1.5 cubits its height. You shall cover it, and 2.5 cubits its length. Verse 11, you shall cover it with pure gold. From within and from without shall you cover it. And you shall make on it a gold crown, a zar is what that's called. All around, You shall cast for it 4 rings of gold and place them on its 4 corners, 2 rings on its one side and 2 rings on its second side. You shall make staves of acacia wood and cover them with gold and insert the staves in the rings of the sides of the ark with which to carry the ark. The staves shall remain in the rings of the ark. They may not be removed from it. You shall place in the ark the testimony that I shall give you. Now, your translation may say testimony tablets or tablets of testimony. It's inferred, but the word tablets is not there. It's just the testimony that I shall give you. So that's the box. Now, here is something I found so intriguing this time around. When we read the description of the tabernacle, it's filled with firsts. When it talks about the kipporet, the cover, the first time kipporet is mentioned in the Bible. When you read about the table of showbread, the shulchan, it's the first time table is mentioned.
And you've taught us through the years that you always go back to the first in order to understand the essence.
Right.
Okay.
When we read about the menorah, first time menorah is mentioned. When we read about the curtains, the yariot that make the ceiling, first time they're mentioned. Yariot is used in the Bible. We read about the planks. That's the first time planks are mentioned in the Bible. There are all these firsts. We could go on and on and on. But when it comes to our own ark, it's the second time it's mentioned in the Bible. So if you want to pause right now and try to guess what the first aron is, the first ark mentioned in the Bible. And again, it's not Noah's ark. That's a different word. The first time aron is mentioned in the Bible. Can you figure out what it is? Okay. If you've unpaused the teaching, here is where it is found. Genesis 50, verse 26. So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in an aron in Egypt.
Fascinating.
That's the first time aron is found. Here's the second time.
So can we assume that there's a connection between that aron and this aron?
We certainly can.
That's a loaded question.
What's so special about Joseph?
Well, he is a very important picture of Yeshua or Messiah.
Yes. There's no character in the Hebrew scriptures who more parallels the life of Yeshua than Joseph.
Right.
In fact, they say what of Mashiach's name would be Mashiach ben Yosef, Messiah, son of Joseph. And what was Yeshua's adopted father's name? Joseph, Mary and Joseph. So Joseph's bones were put in an ark. And that ark traveled with the people of Israel all those 40 years of the wilderness. And went in across the Jordan with them. And he was finally buried in Shechem, 40 years after leaving the land of Egypt. So that's the first ark. So that gives us a clue, like you mentioned, because everything about this ark is a picture of Yeshua. Joseph and the Ark of the Covenant picture the same thing. Now, what is going to be put in the ark? The testimony.
Oh my goodness.
The testimony.
Yeah.
And what is Yeshua? He is God's testimony to us.
The word dwelling among us, right?
So we see Joseph, who pictures Yeshua.
Okay.
We see the testimony, which is Yeshua is the Torah made flesh, right? So Yeshua is the Torah made flesh, but he's also, we have the written Torah. So we see both those pictured here. Joseph is like the living picture of the Torah, and the testimony is the written Torah.
Well, no wonder God begins with this piece of furniture to describe his dwelling place.
It's the focal point.
It is everything.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
And I can't help but notice, Grant, that this is constructed of the combination of wood, which would represent more the material world, and gold, which represents the divine. Once again, we see that combining.
Exactly. And what's interesting, just to jump ahead a little bit, if you go to the holy place, go outside the veil, you have a table that's wood covered with gold, and then the menorah that's solid gold. Then you go out into the outer court, you have an altar that's made out of wood covered with bronze, and then you have a laver that's solid bronze.
Right.
So you see this pairing all the way through. Yeah. Everything's in twos.
It is.
Well, let's go on to the cover, the kipporet.
This is fascinating.
Yeah, and kipporet, if that sounds familiar, it's from the word kippur, which means to cover.
Like Yom Kippur. Right.
So verse 17, you shall make a kipporet, first time that's mentioned in the Bible, of pure gold, 2.5 cubits its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. You shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Now, what do people usually think of when they hear cherubim?
Chubby little babies.
With wings.
Cute. Yeah. With rosy cheeks.
With rosy cheeks. But what are really cherubim?
Well, they're warrior angels, aren't they?
Yes. We first see them mentioned as those who are stationed to guard the entrance.
It's strength.
With a sword.
There's a real, I guess, masculine force represented here as you look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. If we could see a real cherubim right now, we would run in terror or pass out.
Okay.
Yeah. So don't think of little chubby babies with wings. And they're hammered out, shall you make them, from both ends of the cover. You shall make 1 cherub from the end one side, and 1 cherub from the end at the other. From the cover shall you make the cherubim at its 2 ends. Now, if your translation says mercy seat instead of cover, that's a nice sentiment, but it's a horrible translation.
Yeah, it just sort of floated into our translations over the years.
Yeah,
right.
I know I'll offend some people when I say this, but the phrase mercy seat is not found anywhere in the Hebrew scriptures or the Greek scriptures.
Well, we don't
it's
need
absent.
to be emotionally attached to it. Let's just put it aside.
No, would you find mercy there? Of course.
Right.
But it's not called a mercy seat.
Okay.
It's a kipporet. Okay. Anyways. Verse 20, the cherubim shall be with wings spread upward, sheltering the cover with their wings, with their faces, toward one another, toward the cover, shall be the faces of the cherubim. You shall place the cover on the ark from above. See how the ark and the cover mentions 2 separate things?
Right.
And into the ark shall you place the testimony that I shall give you. It is there that now this is so important. It is there that I will set my meetings with you. And I shall speak with you from atop the cover, from between the 2 cherubim that are on the ark of the testimony. Everything that I shall command you to the children of Israel.
So he's describing what we would consider empty space.
Yeah. The wings of the cherubim serve to form a picture frame with no picture.
Okay. And it draws attention to what we really need to pay.
Yes.
It isn't physical.
Right.
It's make a space for him to speak.
It's just the exact opposite of an idol.
Oh my gosh. It's so incredible.
An idol is a thing that people pray to and hope will speak to them.
Or in this Torah portion where they're actually creating one to worship, which is just tragic.
Yeah, that's next Torah portion.
Yeah, we're coming close.
Yeah, coming up. But so God says, frame this empty space, And from that empty space, from that no thing, that nothingness, that's where I'll speak to you.
Wow.
And that to me is just so incredible.
And they're facing each other, and they're also
facing down to the ark.
And these 2 separate pieces of the ark and then the cover are touching. So they are really representing a real oneness.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Well, what's interesting when you bring that up, because I know we're going to talk about the masculine and feminine, but think about it a second. It says this is all hammered out of one piece. You didn't make a cherub, make another cherub, then weld them onto the lid. You took this piece of gold and started hammering it. And so as you start hammering out the cherubim, they're moving apart from each other, from the ends. But then what do? Their wings reach out and come back together
to
above.
Reconnect.
So they separate, come back together.
And then the lid and the bottom part also are separate but together.
Yeah. We had friends over last night, and we had such a great conversation. And we started talking about how there's a theme in Scripture where God takes something, allows it to break down into 2, but then brings it back together.
Yeah.
He made Adam, cut him in half, made male and female. Then they became back together as one flesh.
Right.
In these Torah portions, read about the tabernacle. And then the last couple Torah portions of Exodus, we read about the tabernacle again with all its details. In between, what happens? The golden calf. There's a split, the breaking of the covenant.
Right.
We read about Yeshua. He comes. But what do? We execute him. There's a division. But he's going to come back.
Well, then, of course, it all is about the divine romance where we have that perfect oneness and unity with Hashem, which is broken, and we have distance. And the rest of our story and the story of mankind is making our way back to reconnect with him. So
it's a theme.
It's a theme. It's the story.
But it also happens in individual lives.
Yes.
I was thinking about David. We're watching House of David, and I started thinking about his later years. Here's this man after God's own heart. But what did he do? He had this man murdered, committed adultery with his wife.
There's a crumbling.
And there's a complete separate division, complete brokenness. But then God brings him back.
Yes.
I think of Peter, who, he's ready to die for Yeshua. And then what does he do? He betrays him or denies him 3 times, curses, denies him. And can you imagine how he felt? He was crushed. He was broken. But then God restored him back. It happens in our lives.
It has to happen. It doesn't mean something's wrong. It means your story is playing out because the brokenness is essential to bring you back.
And here's the beautiful picture. Think of the ark cover again. It's this separation, this brokenness, and then coming back together. And God says, now from the middle of that, I'll talk.
Oh, I just got chills.
Because
great.
It's not out of my strengths that God speaks. It's out of my brokenness. And the people I know through whom God speaks in powerful ways, they're broken people.
And really, it doesn't happen because of something that man creates, which can look very religious. But when we quiet and are still and we listen and we allow him to speak out of something otherworldly, then we're changed.
That's right.
Oh boy, we got stuck here. Let's keep going.
Well, that's I think the end. That's as far as we're going to go today.
Okay.
And
but we're not done talking about it, right?
No, not at all.
Okay.
But you mentioned how the lid, of course, is right on top of the box, the ark.
Yes.
Well, I hope everyone can look in their Bibles. Most Bibles will have a little drawing of what the ark or the tabernacle looks like. So find yourself a sketch somewhere of what the tabernacle looks like. And one of the things you'll notice is in the outer court, there are 2 things. And as I mentioned, there's the altar, and then there's the laver. They're on an east-west axis, and they're pretty far apart.
Yes.
Now you go to the holy place. You've got the menorah and the table of showbread. They're on a y-axis.
And they're closer
together.
Yes.
Then you go in the Holy of Holies. You've got the ark, and you have the cover. They're on a z-axis, a vertical axis, and they're in contact.
So all the dimensions are represented, and as you go further in, there's a closer intimacy.
Intimacy increases as you move into the spiritual.
I don't know if we mentioned this last conversation. I know we talked about it with our Sabbath group the other day, but this place that God established to reconnect with his people has been named the bridal chamber of the Most High through the ages. And I mean, that can take your breath away.
Oh, yeah.
If you think about it.
Because it's a place of great intimacy.
Yeah.
And, out in the outer court, it was swarming with people.
Yeah.
It was just a busy place.
Yeah.
But the holy place, only the priest could go in there. Only the priest. Holy of Holies, only one person goes in at a time. That's the high priest. And the deeper you go spiritually, it's just you and God.
It gets more solitary.
Out there in the world, you're mingling with the people.
Sure.
But what did Yeshua do all the time?
He drew them away.
To get alone.
Yes.
He had to go in and spend a time in intimate contact with God. And we have to do the same thing.
It's so neat.
If we want to be effective in the outer court, we have to spend time in the Holy of Holies.
Yeah. Well, I've worked in houses through the years and helped people like redesign and stage, and that's kind of a side note. But the significant part for me has been you can walk into a person's house or dwelling and immediately you get a huge clue about them, because whether we intend to or not, the way we furnish and fill the place we dwell is going to reflect who we are. It just happens. So you and I had a conversation that shifted my understanding of this most divine place, this Holy of Holies, when we were talking about the cherubim. because it's kind of traditional to see the cherubim, the two, as male and female, husband and wife, their wings spread out. And there's legitimate, insight in all of that. But then we discovered something even, I think, more interesting, at least to me. So can you kind of share where we went with this conversation, and we'll see where it leads today?
Well, picture again the Holy of Holies with the cherubim.
Right.
Cherubim is masculine. Hebrew words that end in "im" are masculine.
Okay.
That they end in "ot," they're feminine. There are a few unusual exceptions to that, but cherubim, that's a masculine term. Okay. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about the veil, which is called the perchet, that's feminine. When you talk about the kroshot, those are the planks. I think I got that Hebrew word right.
The vertical
planks, they're covered with gold. That's feminine. When you talk about the curtains overhead, the yariot, that's feminine.
Right.
So everything that makes the walls and the ceiling of this cube is all feminine. Mm-hmm. But the cherubim are masculine. So you're the person I always go to, Robin, when I have questions about the gender roles as they're described in Scripture, and you've made this a study for years. So what is going on here? The surroundings are feminine, but what's inside is the masculine.
It's really special. There's this mysterious verse in Jeremiah 31 where it says, in the days to come, a woman will encircle a man. And there are different interpretations of that. But what it really describes is a time when things picture reality more succinctly. Yeah. And if you go back to the origins of the word for man and woman, and even talking about this, our president had to make like a public declaration that there are two genders recently. So this whole subject has become messy in our culture. Yeah. But in the word, it isn't messy. Yeah. It's clear and beautiful and very, very mystical. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to use that word.
Well, if I can insert something here, what made this jump out to me is that it says that the cherubim will be facing one another.
Yeah.
But it's a different way of putting it. It doesn't say echad el echad, one to one, which is how it's often done.
But one with their brother,
it says,
isn't it?
Ish el achiv, a man to his brother.
Right.
And then when you read about the curtains and the planks, it's Isha el achot, a woman to her sister.
So there's just something going on here.
It's emphasizing the gender.
Yeah.
It's not just one to one or ze el ze, this to this, but it's a man to his brother for the cherubim, a woman to her sister for the curtains and the planks.
Well, for years we've known that the word nachav, which is female, the root of the female, or nachava, is kind of, it's a word that indicates to encircle, or a vessel, a container. It can be described as the setting that contains a precious stone.
Right.
It encircles. That's one of the reasons that traditionally at a Jewish wedding, a bride will come and encircle the husband. It pictures this force, this feminine force and the masculine force. And so what does all that mean? Well, even the word Isha has the letter He, which pictures the womb. Yes. So the letter itself has walls and a ceiling,
but open at the bottom.
And I'm picturing this Holy of Holies, Grant, with the planks, but then the curtains come down over the top and drape down the sides, and it's encircling this sacred space.
Yes.
And it's protecting it, and it's providing something that gives it definition and purpose.
Right.
And I think that's the role that God intended for the feminine force in this world to carry out, to encircle, to protect, to give definition to. It isn't a diminished role. We see it here. So when I think of the Holy of Holies now, I kind of am able to picture what God is establishing here for us in this world. And not that there isn't an overlap. There's a time for a woman to take up a sword, and there is a time for a man to encircle and protect. It's fluid.
Yes.
But there are forces. Yeah. And he is giving us a really beautiful picture here.
Yeah, I think what the enemy has succeeded in doing to a great degree in many people's minds is, instead of us thinking about gender, we think about sex.
It's weird.
But gender, male, female, is something so sacred to God. Whenever I do a wedding, I don't think I've ever failed to mention this. The Bible starts at the wedding. There's Adam and Eve. And the Bible ends with a wedding. There's Messiah and his bride. And when Yeshua came, where did he perform his first miracle? At a wedding in Cana. There's this thing about masculine, feminine becoming one is a huge idea. And it's not just sex. It's not just a human couple. It's a picture of God and his bride. It's a picture of giving and receiving.
Giving and receiving.
It's a picture of two becoming one. And that's what God wants us spiritually to do. He wants to be one with us. He wants to dwell within us. He wants to dwell among us. And there's nothing more powerful than sexuality, male, female, to picture these deep spiritual truths.
Well, going back to the letter He in the womb, in the word Isha, it's the perfect illustration of what you're describing, because the womb becomes a place to surround and protect that seed that comes from that masculine, and it becomes the potential for a whole new life. And then that feminine force is something that guards it and allows it to mature. And I mean, there's just a lot that you can take and run with and begin to understand and unpack.
Let me add this little detail in. We talk about the Aron. Aron is all afresh, vav nun. You add a He into that, you then have a Haron, Aaron. Who is the high priest who went into the Holy of Holies? Aaron. You take Aron.
So you're adding that.
Add the He into it. Now you have the high priest.
So this masculine and feminine force, I use that word force because it's a very spiritual thing. And they work in tandem in the universe, whether we choose to understand it or, embrace it and celebrate and enjoy it or not. It's embedded.
Yes. Well, here's the way you can think of what gender pictures, just in very general, large terms. The giver is the masculine. The receiver is the feminine. So, if we're in the kitchen doing something, you're the boss. You take the masculine role. I follow your orders. So you're the masculine, I'm the feminine. But embodied in our bodies is either masculine or feminine. So everything's about giving, receiving. But in the enemy's economy, everything's about taking.
Yeah.
Taking. And God is against taking. Receiving is good.
It's why he created us to be a vessel for all the love that he wanted to impart. So anyway, we are really digressing.
Yes.
But I hope that we've at least given a clue to the majesty and the exquisite beauty of what he describes in this text.
There's so much more going on.
There's so much more.
So I just ditto what you said, Robin, that I hope we've whetted the appetite of people just to look into this, to meditate on it. Let God speak to them through these amazing images.
It truly is holy ground, so you might want to take your shoes off before you read it.
As Aaron did when he served in the tabernacle. Well, just to close here, I think about Aaron in the Holy of Holies or in anywhere and in the holy place. When he looked up, he saw red, blue, and scarlet woven together in the cherubim. He looked up and he saw the heavenlies. He looked down, there's dirt under his feet because there's no floor in the tabernacle. And that's a picture of us. We dwell in this place where we can look up and we can look into the spiritual. We can look down, we see the earth. We dwell right there where the two come together. We're like C.S. Lewis amphibians. We have one foot in the spiritual realm, one in the physical. And that is so well pictured by the priest serving in the tabernacle.
I just had a thought. We didn't talk about this until this moment, but I'm thinking that a really cool way for you to close out today's conversation is to just impart a blessing to our listeners with the Aaronic blessing. And begin with Hebrew, please, and then just bless our listeners today.
All right. Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Yer Adonai panoi v'lecha v'yochanecha. Yisa Adonai panoi v'lecha v'yasim lecha shalom. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai make his face to shine upon you. May he raise his face upon you and be gracious to you. May Adonai make his face to shine. I got that all wrong, Robin. We'll have to go back. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Adonai lift his countenance upon you and give you shalom. Yes. And with that, we wish you shalom. I didn't know you were going to do that.
Peace, everybody.
May God bless.
Thank you for joining us for today's teaching. If the work of Torah Today Ministries has touched your life, please consider making a donation or sponsoring an upcoming video. As a video sponsor, you'll have an exclusive opportunity to memorialize a family member, celebrate a special event, or simply support the ongoing creation of similar content. Your tax-deductible contribution helps ensure that our teachings continue to reach all who are longing for truth. Click the link or visit our website to learn more.